Welcome to MYGOMINDS. In this video, we will see about SQL constraints. Basically, we have different SQL constraints such as null constraint, not null constraint, unique constraint, primary key constraint, foreign key constraint, check constraint, default constraint, unique plus not null constraints, composite primary key constraint, etc. In this video, we will see about null, not null, unique and primary key constraints. So, what are constraints? Constraints are used to give conditions and restrictions to columns. And constraints are used to validate the data. Before inserting the data into a table, we need to know if the data is valid or invalid. Only to insert the valid data into the table, we use constraints by giving some conditions and restrictions to those columns in a table. We will see about null constraint. Null constraint allows null values. A null value represents the absence of data or an unknown value in a table. That means we can give null values in that column of a table. The next constraint is not null constraint. Not null constraint does not allow null values. Whenever a not null constraint is applied to a column, then every row in the table must have a non-null value in that column. That means that column will not allow any null values to be inserted into it. Next one is unique constraint. Unique key constraint will not allow duplicate values and also will not allow but will allow null values. The next constraint is primary key constraint. A primary key is applied to a column or a set of columns in a database table that uniquely identifies each record in that table. That means primary key is applied to tell the uniqueness of a record in a table. Let us see these constraints in detail. First one is null constraint. We said that null constraint allows null values. Whenever we create a table, by default, every table allows null values and duplicate values. The syntax to use null constraint is create table name, column name data type null, call name data type. We can give as many column names as we want. Example of a null constraint is create table emp, enumber int null, which is a constraint name, ename varchar 50. Let us see this in the MySQL workbench. Firstly, we need to create the database before creating a table. Let us create database MYGOMINDS. Select it and execute it. Then we need to use the database, use MYGOMINDS. Select it and execute it. Then we need to create a table with null constraint. Create table emp, enumber int null, ename varchar of 50. Select the line and execute it. The table is successfully created, indicating the green tick here. Now we will describe the table to see the structure of the table. To do that, we need to use the command descemp. Select it and execute it. We can see that there are two columns, enumber and ename, in the table emp. We have given the constraint null for the enumber column that there is yes specified here. I already told that by default it takes null values. So for ename also the null value specifies as yes. Next we will see about the not null constraint. Not null constraint does not allow null values, but will allow duplicate values. The syntax for not null constraint is create table name, call name data type not null, column name data type, and we can give as many columns as we wish. Example for not null constraint is create table emp, enumber int not null, ename varchar of 50. Let us see this in MySQL workbench. Let us create a table emp1 enumber int not null, ename varchar of 50. We created emp1 because emp table already exists in this database. Select the line and execute it. We have successfully created emp1 table, as you can see a green tick here. Now we will describe this table by using describe emp1 and select it, then execute it. We can see the structure of the table. We have two columns, enumber and ename. We specified not null constraint for the enumber column, so no is specified for the null values for enumber column, and yes is specified for ename since we did not give any not null constraint for ename. Let us try inserting some null values so that we can see if it will really reject it or not. Insert into, need to give single quotations and then select it and execute it. Here we can see the error column name enumber cannot be null. That means when we specify not null constraint, then we cannot insert null values into that column. Now let us see the next constraint, which is unique constraint. Unique key constraint can be applied for more than one column on a single table. Unique key constraint will have a constraint name. We can also say that unique key constraint will allow null values but will not allow duplicate values. The syntax for unique key constraint is create table name, column name data type unique, call name data type, and we can give as many column names as we wish. Example for unique key constraint is create table E3, enumber int unique, ename varchar of 50. Let us see this in the MySQL workbench. To create a table with unique key constraint, we need to use create table emp2 enumber int unique, ename varchar of 50. Select the line and execute it. Here, the green tick indicates that this emp2 table is successfully created. Now let us describe this emp2 to know the structure of the table. Select the line and execute it. We can see that unique key allows null values, so the null values specified for enumber and ename are both yes. We have given a unique key for the enumber column, so the key mentions uni for enumber column. Here we cannot insert duplicate values, so let us try inserting. For an example, insert into emp2 101, uname. emp2 values. For example, let us try inserting some values into the emp2 table. Insert into emp2 values 101, uname. Close the bracket and select it and execute it. This is successfully executed since this is the first value we inserted. Now try inserting the same value again. Now it doesn't get executed because it is a duplicate entry and we have given the unique key constraint for emp2 table. So we can say that unique key constraint does not allow duplicate values. Next, let us see the next constraint, which is primary key constraint. Primary key constraint will not allow null values as well as will not allow duplicate values. Primary key constraint can be applied only once on a single table. Primary key constraint will have a constraint name. The syntax of primary key constraint is create table name, column name data type primary key, column name data type. And we can give as many column names as we wish. The example for primary key is create table E1, enumber int primary key, ename varchar of 50. Let us see this in the MySQL workbench. The example to create a table with primary key is create table name, which is emp3, enumber int primary key, ename varchar of 50. Select the line and execute it. Here we have successfully created emp3 table with a primary key constraint. Now let us describe the emp table to know its structure. Select the line and execute it. Here we can see that there are two columns, enumber and ename. Since primary key does not allow null values, the null value specifies no for enumber, and since we specified primary key, the key column contains PRI, which indicates primary key. There is another way to specify the primary key when creating a table, which is by giving a constraint name to the primary key. Let us see the syntax to create it. Create table name, column name data type, constraint name, primary key of column name, to which we need to specify the primary key too. Let us see it with an example. Create table E2, enumber int, constraint name, which is pke2, primary key of enumber, ename varchar. Let's see this in MySQL workbench. Here we are creating a table with primary key by also giving a constraint name to the primary key. Create table emp4 enumber int, constraint name, which is pk underscore table name emp4, primary key of column name, which is enumber, ename varchar of 50. Select the line and execute it. Here the table emp4 has been successfully created with a constraint primary key and a constraint name pkemp4. The only difference between the above syntax and the below syntax is giving a constraint name to it. The features are all the same. Thank you. Please like, share and subscribe MYGOMINDS. Catch you later in the next video.